Okay. All right. My name is Terrie Gooch. I was actually born in Tennessee, but my mom and dad and I only lived there for a year. My dad, Leo Gooch, who was a longtime State Farm insurance agent here in town, actually had his degree in teaching and education and got his master's degree, and thought he wanted to be a basketball coach. So we took off to Tennessee after he graduated from Ole Miss, and actually I was born there. We spent 1 year, and I think they were as eager and happy as anybody could be to get back to Union County. When he was working on his master's degree that summer after I was born, there was a recruiter at Ole Miss, and they had a job out at Pinedale, and we moved to Pinedale, and he was a principal there and basketball coach, and still has memories of those people as that played for him, both guys and girls. He coached both teams. So my love of sports it came easily because he was a coach, and in fact one of my favorite pictures is him kneeling with a little Christmas tree behind us, and I'm sitting on his knee, and he's got a basketball in the other hand. And his brother, my uncle, was also a basketball coach. So if New Albany had a basketball team back in my days, I never would have picked up a tennis racket. In fact, if you've been watching any TV this summer, you've probably seen advertisements for ESPN doing some kind of special about Title IX. Title IX was enacted in 1972, so that makes it 50 years this year. Title IX said that schools and places had to have comparable programs for girls, and so they gave the schools a 5-year window to implement those programs, and so I came in during that 5-year window. And the only sports that W.P. Daniel had for girls were track and tennis, and so I was actually back to being in Tennessee. We got back to Union County, and my mom and dad have been in Union County and New Albany ever since. So this is home. I often joke sometimes when I was growing up that New Albany was a great little town to be from, and I was in Columbus, but now I say New Albany is a great place to be, and so it really is. But my tennis career started in junior high. Jane Carthorpe was the PE teacher, and she actually walked with us, the class, from the gym there at the middle school. We walked down to the 2 courts on South Central, and I remember carrying the tennis rackets down there, and we played tennis down there, and that was the first time I'd ever really played tennis. From there, my mom bought my brother and me two tennis rackets with S&H green stamps. And so we went out and would, bang around and hit some tennis balls. But I had run track in junior high, and then in 9th grade I had some friends that were tennis players, and I was really wanting to play something. I mean, I was a fairly athletic person, and so some friends were on the tennis team, and that would have been 1970, and we had a pretty good team back then. In fact, my first year of playing tennis, I was thrown to the wolves to play singles. Most of the people on the team were juniors, and they already had their mixed doubles partner or their girls doubles partner. And I remember I think it was probably my first match. We went to Tupelo, and Tupelo was really one of our big rivals, and they were a strong team. But they also had a very, very good girls singles player. In fact, she and I ended up being teammates later at the W. But she was really good, and like I said, I'd only been playing a couple of months, and I remember keeping score in tennis, 15, 30, 40 game. Of course, I understood deuce and add in and that, but I wasn't sure if it was 15, 30, 40 or if it was 15, 30, 45. And so when I would call the score at the match, I would call it until I got to that point, and then I just didn't say anything. I knew what it was, but I wasn't sure what the number was. And the second thing I remember about that first match was actually turning around and pulling the tennis ball out of the fence. She hit the ball that hard. If I didn't return it, it hit the fence, it was stuck in the cyclone fence. So I was thrown to the wolves that first match, but even she told me when we had a rematch later in the season that I had really improved by the end of the season. And so I got started playing tennis first from my PE teacher, Miss Cartharp, and then secondly with friends. Now, it's really, a lot of people in New Albany know about the football team winning the Little Ten Conference, and I think it was 1962, I think. But very few people, I would imagine, know that the tennis team won the Little Ten Conference in 1971. We were playing in Aberdeen, and it was people like Steve DePriest, Martha Snyder, and Lynn Rosenfeld, and Jade Smith, and Johnny Lamar, and Don Evans, and people like that. We were playing down there for the championship, and so I can still see that trophy sitting in the trophy case at W.P. Daniel with a light shining on it. In fact, I've been tempted to go back up and say, where do y'all have all of your old trophies? I'd love to go back through and find that and bring it down, but that's just a special memory to me because it was a pretty big deal. So once I started playing in high school, then I discovered the circuit for the Mississippi Tennis Association and started playing in some tournaments. The first one was in Oxford at Ole Miss, and it was sponsored by the JCs, a men's club here in town. And I was able to go over and play in that and started playing in those tournaments on a regular basis. But like I said, those days were very different. We didn't have tennis lessons. We didn't have a tennis pro. We really just kind of learned from playing on our own. Some members of the community would come and play with us. I remember Bill Rutledge coming down and playing some matches with us. Now, we were just high school kids, but he would come down and play with us. And Alan Jackson would come down and play with us, and Tom Shands would come down and play with us some. But the person that played the most with us was Brother Pete Evans. He was a longtime minister at the First Baptist Church, and his son, Don, played on the team. And he'd come down and he'd play doubles with us, and he'd just watching their strokes, seeing them play, but them taking an interest in us. Now, if you went and asked them something about that, they may not even remember it because it wasn't a lot, but the times that they did come meant a lot to me because I was seeing their strokes, I was seeing what it was supposed to be, and they were good mentors. They were sportsmen, and they understood the game, and so we were learning from them, and that was really a good time. But friends, sticking together, playing together. Playing down on the 2 courts on South Central, even before the 4 courts, I think it's 4, were built over by the middle school. I mean, that would have been, a shrine to us to have had that many courts. And it was also an advantage to be that close to the school. But then, B&A Bank today sponsoring and having the complex with the tennis and the soccer. I mean, that is super fantastic, and it's a great drawing card to bring people into the town. But it tells you the support. I mean, that's just monumental in the support of the citizens, putting that kind of money into a facility that so many people benefit from. But back in the day when we were playing, the New Albany Gazette was really good at covering our matches, and we were just kids, so when we would see our write-ups in the paper, that was a big deal. And I always thought it was interesting if I went off and played in a tournament in Jackson or something, and I'd get home and I might have had a trophy or a piece of silver or something like that, and I'd get a call, so-and-so from the New Albany Gazette wants to come and take your picture, and I'm like, how did they know? But that was really cool, and just not everybody has that kind of local coverage for their high school sports, but the Gazette's always been really, really good at that. And then that put it out there. That put it out there for people at church, and it was a big deal when you won a tennis match. You even played a tennis match. The next morning after school, at school during the morning announcements, and the intercom would come on and it'd say, yesterday the tennis team defeated so-and-so, and everybody just made it a big deal to play. And so it was a happening. All sports were a happening. The difference for me was it was in those days of the beginning of Title IX when that's all we had was tennis. and track. And I don't remember a lot of people running track in high school. I do remember us doing that in junior high. In fact, I even set a baseball throw record for the longest throw, and was running a 75-yard dash. And I remember the coach coming back, and we were all standing around, and he said, well, we've got ourselves a photo finish, first place. And I've always wished I could have seen that picture of winning that 75-yard dash. But, you know, people came out and played with us. People asked us about our matches. And so, you know, it was just, like I said, it was a happening to be involved in the sports, and everybody knew that you were on the tennis team. From there, going to the state championships, playing, you know, New Albany's won a lot of state championships. Back in my day, we all the class, A, AA, AAA, all the classes were in one tournament. So it was like an overall tournament, but it was the only tournament. And so I had to play against a girl that was from one of the Jackson schools. I knew ahead of time that she was the better player. She was like number 3 in the South, which is 9 states. But that was my dream, you know, for a whole year to win the state championship. And I can remember every night when I'd go to bed, reaching up and turning off the light switch in my bedroom before I'd get into bed. Okay, now just pretend like this is the hotel room, you know, trying to get ready so I wouldn't be nervous. And in the finals, you had to play 3 or 4 matches. So, you know, I'm in the finals. We're playing at a place called Battlefield Park. And they had Rubico courts, which is like a synthetic clay. It moves. When I first stepped on it, I thought I had sand on the bottom of my foot, and I was trying to get it off my shoe, but I realized that was the playing surface, which also was an advantage for them. Not only were they a bigger school, but we were playing on a surface that was foreign to us. And I tell that story because that is another example of the community pitching in to help us athletes. Tupelo was one of our big rivals, like I said before. And when I would qualify at district for the state tournament, Dr. Pettis from Tupelo had his own clay court in his backyard. And they would invite me to come over and play each afternoon the week prior to the state tournament, so I could get some experience learning to slide on the clay. And I thought that was so cool because they were one of our big rivals, but at the same time, they knew, you know, for me to have a chance, you know, at that tournament, I needed some practice on that surface. And, you know, I remember going over there and taking some of my friends so I'd have, you know, people to play with and us practicing over there. But I always thought that was a nice gesture from rival to rival, but yet it shows you the support. It branched out from New Albany, then to North Mississippi, going to the state tournament. And then when I was at the state tournament, the only people there at that particular time were my mom. My dad was on a business trip. My mom and my English teacher, Anna Quinn. Now, I have to say, she was my all-time favorite teacher. And her husband, Kenneth Quinn, was a basketball coach, and he was also an administrator at some point. But he was our tennis coach. Now, that tennis coach, but for some reason he didn't go. I don't remember all of the details. All I know is Miss Quinn and my mom were there. And when I was playing the match, I won the first game, and I heard you know, cheers, and I looked several courts down, and the bleachers down there at the end of the courts, when I looked, they were filled with Tupelo players. Now, a lot of people on their team had qualified for the tournament. I was the only one that had qualified for the state tournament that year, and so I was the only one there. But they were cheering. They wanted New Albany to win that match. So I won that first game, and I think I ended up losing 6-1, 6-1. She was better than me, but you know, that's just a cool memory for them to be that supportive. But when I walked off the court, the stranger came up. Her name was Zandra Barlow, and she was a recruiter for the W. And she said, would you be interested in playing tennis at the W? And of course, my internal thought was no. I'm an Ole Miss fan, you know. But the more I thought about it throughout the summer, I thought, you know, I really would like the opportunity to say I played on tennis scholarship, because that was kind of what I was known for, was being a tennis player, and I could have played at Ole Miss, but I can tell you this, during my playing days at the W, Ole Miss and Mississippi State were easy matches. Because of Title IX, no one else was giving scholarships at the time except Mississippi University for Women. So there were a lot of opportunities there for women that they might not have other places because they weren't sharing those dollars with the men, again, at the time. And so the more I thought about it, I thought, I really would like to say I played on a tennis scholarship, and I was going into physical education, and I knew they had a good department, and we really traveled during those days. I mean, we went to Florida State, played in tournaments. We went to University of North Carolina, played, matches, Duke University. One of the best matches I ever played my whole life. I won 7-6, 7-6, 2 tiebreakers against the University of Alabama. That girl ended up turning pro, played a little bit of tennis, but on that day, on our surface in Columbus, I won that match. We beat Auburn, we beat LSU, so we were doing some traveling. So those were some really good days. Again, looking back on my New Albany days with the impact that people made in your life, they made you believe. They supported you, they made you believe you could. And I remember thinking that some of these larger towns like Jackson and this, that, and the other, they had opportunities and things that we didn't have. And so for a while I thought they were superior. But because of support that you got, because of people building you up and putting you on a pedestal almost, then you started living up to the expectations that you had here at home. And what I found out was we were really equal, if not superior, to those in other towns. We had just as much opportunity and ability, to be successful as they did, but it was coming from a different place. They were coming because they had the pros and the lessons and this and that. In fact, we used to joke. Tupelo would ask us, "Where in the world do y'all practice?" And we would make a joke, because we knew they were kidding us, and we'd say, "We hit up against the wall at Big Star." Well, of course that wasn't true, but looking back, we had some strikes against us with the court situation. In fact, we never played Tupelo in New Albany. We always went to Tupelo to play the match, and that made sense because they had so many courts. I wouldn't trade a thing. New Albany is a special place. It gives you a chance because of the relationships you have with your friends, with the people that came and played with you, with the school support, that it just gave you confidence and made a believer out of you. And I actually ended up turning tennis into a career. From my days of playing at the W, I got certified as a teaching professional by both the USPTA and the PTR, and they're the two big teaching entities, just like PGA Golf. This is the tennis version. Got the top rating, when I tested for those certifications. That means a lot to me because a lot of people will take the test and they get the second or the third rating, and they have to retest if they want to build up to the top rating. And there were like 5% of the people that take that test that get that the first time. And again, going back to my dad, he had taken some tests in insurance. You took 10 different tests to get your certified life underwriter certification, and he wanted to do that. He passed every one of them the first time, so I had all this pressure on me to pass my USPTA and PTR test the first time, and I did. And it's a 3-part test. It's a playing test. You have to demonstrate all the strokes. It's a teaching test. You have to teach both a private lesson and a a group lesson, and then you have to take, of course, a written test. So it's pretty comprehensive. But I coached high school tennis and really enjoyed that because I felt like I was able to give those kids opportunities and recognitions that maybe I didn't have as much of growing up. The support was there, but the facilities had not gotten where they are now in New Albany. And so I was able to do that for them, and so it was just fun to provide those opportunities. And so I coached at the high school level, the college level, went back to the W and coached there for 7 years, and actually had undefeated season with my first senior group. Back to the high school tennis, I 9 or 10 state championships, we won. And by that time, tennis was divided into classifications. And so it gave everybody at every level, just like these kids in New Albany playing 4A, it gives them a chance to be successful and shine, and everybody say, man, they are really, this is a great program. That's right, but if they had to play against 5A, it might not be quite so. And so, all these things that came about with Title IX, with giving girls equal opportunity, I mean, it's made a difference. It's made a difference to the whole program. So from playing in New Albany to playing at the W, from making tennis my career as a coach at several different levels. Then I was a tennis pro at the private club down there. Loved that, just like the B&A facility here. They've got multiple courts and this, that, and the other. Columbus had Magnolia Tennis Club, so we had a lot of awards and things, as a player, but also as a teacher and a coach. From the Mississippi Tennis Association, also through the Southern Tennis Association, we were getting tournaments of the year and this. And in fact, I've got a picture I saw not long ago. We're talking about tournaments. Bill Rutledge, Steve DePriest, myself, and there's one other person posing for the New Albany City Championship trophies. And I just love that picture because it was a big deal. And the community made it a big deal, the paper made it a big deal, and it made a believer out of you. So success breeds success, and I think New Albany is just on the tip of the iceberg of where they're going, but they're already there in a lot of ways. And so I'm real blessed to have grown up in this town all my life, with the education you get from the schools, the support you get from the community, the relationships you make. I ran into Steve DePriest and Don Evans in the last week and a half, and it was I could almost see their strokes. I could almost see their forehands and backhands when I'm talking to them, but I hadn't seen them in years. But you just don't forget things like that. Tennis is a little bit different from other sports. If you win a championship in basketball or football, you come off the field, everybody's jumping up and down, you're patting each other on the back. The stands are filled with people and family and friends. When you win a tennis match, especially if it's a singles match, you come off the court, you have to be a little bit humble because it's only you. You can't come off, yay. But that's why your teammates are so important, is because they're doing the same thing. They're playing their doubles match, or they're playing their boys singles match. Then you come together and count all the points for an overall team score. So, it's got that element to it when you look at the team championships. But to be playing your individual match, there's a lot that you have to deal with that's just you. But when you come off the court, I always did this when I was coaching. Every time the kids came off the court, I always stuck my hand out and would shake their hand. Win or lose, shake their hand. Doesn't matter, because they were out there by themselves, and that handshake says we're in this together. That's something tennis players do anyway. At the end of the match, they come to the net and they shake hands. Well, coach to player, that was important to me. So, just carrying on those relationships forever and ever. You'll just always remember. It's not the trophy, it's not the plaque, it's the memories that you have and the things that you accomplished and the people that were there with you and for you. Toward the end of my tennis teaching career at Magnolia Tennis Club, I had been there 12, almost 13 years. I was a little over 50 years old, and the tennis club was going to consolidate the positions. Tennis pro, which is what I was, teaching lessons, running tournaments, stringing rackets. They were going to combine that position with the club manager. So I was doing both. I was keeping the books and ordering for the pro shop and all of that. And I did that for 2 years, and after 2 years I thought, I just want to teach. I just really want to teach. So I renewed my teaching certificate, and there had not been an elementary PE job open in Columbus in 12 years, and the one opened up that summer. And so I resigned my position there at the tennis club, and great relationships, great people, loved that job, but I went into teaching elementary PE, kindergarten through 5th grade at a public school in Columbus. That probably has been one of my more gratifying experiences because of the life lessons you're able to teach. And a lot of those kids came from broken homes. They didn't know their dad, didn't know where it was from. In fact, one of my favorite things to do is to be talking and teaching PE, and I always laugh. I say, it was a great opportunity to teach life lessons because under my arm I had the ball. So as long as I had the ball, they would listen if I were on my soapbox to the life lessons that I was teaching that day, and those were not planned. Those were in response to something I had witnessed or seen or heard, just on a daily basis. So it was always pertinent to something that had just happened. But teaching those life lessons was really important. And when I would say, let me just tell y'all what my dad used to say, and it would get so quiet, you could hear a pin drop, and those kids were just thirsty for what somebody's daddy said to them. And so I knew that they were just grasping. I was in Columbus a couple of days ago, and I ran into an ex-student. I'll be honest with you, I don't know who it was. I didn't recognize him because I probably had him in the 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade, and now he's in his 20s. But he and his wife were at the credit union. They were coming out, and he said, "You notice I recognized you when you came out. It's just you can't forget a good person." So see, they heard a lot of life lessons. I was talking one time to a group of kids, and I was talking to them about what happens outside the school windows and the doors. One of these days when you're on your own, now you're safe, you're within the school, but one of these days you're going to be out there on the street and the things that can happen and how you need to. This little boy raised his hand, and I don't even know the purpose of that talk, but he raised his hand, and I'm thinking, he's going to say, when are we going to play? But that's not what he said. He said, I just love PE. And I said, why? We haven't done anything yet. And he said, because you tell us things. And they're just so thirsty for that. All right, that goes back to what sports is all about. If I had been the music teacher, they might not have listened to what I said. If I'd been the art teacher, they might not have listened. If I was the math teacher, they might not. If I'd been the principal, they might. But being the PE teacher with the ball, with the activities that they wanted, I had something they wanted, then they were willing to listen, and then it became a mission field. It became an opportunity to give them what they needed at a time when they needed to hear those things. And so that was really special. We would go to the YMCA. That was neat because at the YMCA I would stop sometimes and I would say, what do these letters mean? Young Men's Christian Association. So I was able to to say, get some dialogue and get some things going that you might not be able to do at the schools. And one of my, I'll finish up with this. One of my favorite stories was going to a school once a week to do PE and having some of the boys help me take equipment in and out of the building back to my car. And one day there was just one fella, and he and I were leaning on the steps and we were talking, and I have no idea where it came from, and I was like, I know things aren't good at your home. I know that you wish things were different. But one of these days you're going to get to choose your wife. You're going to get to choose your job. You're going to get to choose. You're going to get to buy things for your children that you wish your daddy would buy for you now. But you got to stay in school. You got to keep working. You got to get that job so you can do those things. And when I was going to the car, I'm like, where did that come from? And I'm thinking, I know where that came from. Well, but the point to the story is the next week, the same boy and another were helping me take equipment back to my car. And the first boy, the one I had talked to previously, said to me, he looked at me and he said, would you tell him, his friend, would you tell him what you told me? And so he wanted the same thing. He wanted hope for his friend like he had received hope from our conversation before. So, yes, I was an elementary PE teacher. But I was a whole lot more than that. I know it and they know it. And that's why sports and activities and teammates and coaches, that's why it's so important, because you have a love of what you're playing. You get to experience all the highs and lows. You lost, you won, you're getting better, you got a chance. I used to use that as an example with the kids, for discipline. I would say next year when you go to middle school, you're going to go out for the football team, you're going to go out for the basketball team. But there are 5 elementary schools. You can't all be on the basketball team. And so after you practice a while, there's going to be a clipboard, and it's going to have the names of people that made the team. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 15 maybe. And you're going to go up there, and if your name's not on it, you're not on the team. And I said, and coaches like to see things like you looking at them. They like to see you looking in their eyes. They like to see you nodding your head that you're listening. They like to hear you say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. Just things like that, something that a child wants to be on the team, to be a part of. But the opportunities that you have to teach them things that are necessary for that to happen, goal setting, it just goes on and on and on, and that fires me up really as much or more than anything. I could make another whole video on the opportunities that you have when you're teaching children, and when you're doing that through an activity that they enjoy, like sports. So for somebody to say that, oh, it's just PE, boy, I'm gonna tell you what, it is just PE, and it makes a difference in people's lives. Coaches do, and players have the same. When I saw that little fellow the other day that said, I remember you, coach, his wife came out and she starts walking right to me. And so I said, yes, I need a hug, and she gave me a hug. Well, then he gets out of the car and he hugs me. And I told him, I said, y'all don't know how much this meant. You really don't know how much this meant. That meant more to me than it ever meant to them, because they remembered and they got something out of it. I saw a boy and a girl walking across the grass one day, and they were holding their little son's hand. And they were coming all the way across. I'm thinking, okay, who is that? What's his name? And I think he's coming. I think they're coming toward me. And sure enough, they walked right to me. And he Coach Gooch, I remember everything you ever taught us. Everything you ever told us. That's what being a coach is. That's what being a coach is giving people life lessons that maybe they haven't had the opportunity to learn that I did right here in New Albany, Mississippi. And then it becomes their choice. But I think there's a whole lot more good comes from things like that than people give credit. And so I encourage sports and teams and coaches. It's an opportunity to make a difference in people's lives. It's a mission field. It's a mission field.